The alarm buzzed sharply at 7:15 a.m., dragging me out of the fragile cocoon of sleep. I rubbed my eyes and sat up on the edge of my bed, staring at the morning sunlight filtering through the blinds. My room, a mix of organized chaos, reflected my life in miniature. Stacks of textbooks on one corner, neatly folded clothes on another, and a small section dedicated to my secret, an assortment of skirts, silky blouses, and a carefully arranged makeup kit. Most people wouldn't notice the delicate pink ribbon tied around my vanity mirror, but it symbolized something important to me, a world I only dared to enter when I was alone. I'm Alex, 22, a college student pursuing literature with a part-time tutoring job. On the surface, I'm just like anyone else, friendly, a little shy, but fairly normal. But beneath that ordinary exterior lies a secret I guard fiercely. For as long as I can remember, I've been drawn to the thrill of crossdressing. At first, it was curiosity, an innocent experiment with my sister's clothes when she was away. But over time, it became a lifeline, a way to explore parts of myself that the world outside never allowed me to show. It's complicated, messy, and thrilling all at once. This morning, however, my usual ritual felt heavier. Today, I had a meeting with my literature professor, Ms. Daniels. She wasn't just any professor. She had a reputation for pushing her students far beyond their limits, encouraging unconventional methods to accelerate learning. The thing was, Ms. Daniels had a keen eye for noticing things, especially subtle details most people overlooked. And over the past few weeks, she had started noticing me, the real me, the side I tried so hard to hide. My relationship with Emma, my girlfriend, added another layer of tension. Emma is smart, vibrant, and intensely perceptive, everything I love about her, and everything that made hiding my secret even more nerve-wracking. She knows about some of my quirks, like my love for literature and my tendency to overanalyze every detail, but she doesn't know the deepest layer of me, the one that craves the thrill of dresses, makeup, and heels. The fear of her judgment kept me careful, constantly calculating, but also secretly yearning for the day I might share everything. As I dressed for the day, I felt the familiar flutter of anxiety mixed with excitement. I chose a simple outfit, a fitted shirt and jeans, blending into the crowd at college, masking the secret desires that lingered just beneath the surface. But my mind wandered, as it often did, to the moments when I allowed myself the freedom to be fully me, high heels clicking on my bedroom floor, the soft brush of makeup against my skin, the smooth fabric of a skirt against my legs. Each time, it was like stepping into another world, one where I could feel powerful, delicate, and utterly myself at the same time. College was bustling by the time I stepped out. Students hurried to classes, coffees in hand, earbuds in, conversations blurring into a chaotic hum. I felt both anonymous and exposed in the crowd, a delicate tension that had become second nature to me. My heart beat faster as I approached the building where Ms. Daniels held her office hours. There was a part of me that thrilled at the thought of her seeing me, not the ordinary Alex, but the more daring side she had started to notice. Ms. Daniels' office was warm, with shelves overflowing with books and soft lighting that made every corner feel intimate. When I knocked, she looked up from her notes, her sharp eyes meeting mine. "Alex, come in," she said, her voice calm but carrying that undeniable undertone of expectation. Sitting across from her, I felt the subtle electricity of anticipation, knowing she had something unusual in mind, something that might push me further than I'd ever dared. Her words came gently but firmly, almost teasing in their precision. "I've noticed your focus is extraordinary, but I also know you can reach deeper levels of understanding if you let yourself step out of your comfort zone. I have a method that some students find unusual, but it works." She paused, her gaze assessing. "I want you to try something different today. I want you to learn faster in heels." I blinked, unsure if I'd heard her correctly. "In heels?" I stammered. "Yes," she said, with the kind of certainty that left no room for argument. "You'll be my pet student in this exercise. Trust me, you'll learn more about yourself than you realize." A shiver ran down my spine, not entirely from fear, but from the mixture of anxiety and an unexpected thrill. My mind raced, imagining the transformation I would undergo. Not just the physical act of putting on heels, but the emotional journey, vulnerability, excitement, and the ever-present tension of secrecy. This was more than a lesson in literature or strategy. It was an initiation into a world where my two identities might collide in ways I hadn't imagined. As I left her office, clutching my notebook with trembling hands, I realized the stakes were higher than ever. This wasn't just about grades or approval, it was about control, identity, and the delicate balance between who I was and who I longed to be. Every step toward that classroom, every brush against the polished floor, felt like a test. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew that once I embraced this challenge, there would be no turning back. By the time I returned to my apartment, the tension had settled into a simmering anticipation. I set down my bag and took a deep breath, eyes drifting to the corner of the room where my secret collection waited. Today, I would begin the transformation, guided by Ms. Daniels' unorthodox methods. Today, I would learn faster in heels. And in doing so, I would step closer to a world where I was both terrified and exhilarated, where the line between fear and desire blurred, and every choice carried weight beyond imagination. I hesitated for a moment, staring at the delicate fabrics, the shimmering heels, the carefully arranged makeup. The thrill of stepping into this hidden persona was intoxicating. The risk of being discovered, of judgment or ridicule, made my heart pound, but it also sharpened my senses. With a trembling hand, I picked up a pair of black patent heels, feeling the smooth surface under my fingers. It was a small gesture, but one loaded with symbolism. The first step toward becoming the pet student Ms. Daniels envisioned. As I slipped into the heels, the world seemed to tilt slightly, my balance precarious, yet exhilarating. The mirror reflected a mixture of nervousness and daring determination. I took a deep breath and whispered to myself, almost as a promise, "This is just the beginning." The first day of the experiment started quietly, almost innocuously. I arrived at my apartment, carrying the heels Ms. Daniels had suggested, my mind spinning with possibilities. The polished black shoes gleamed in the afternoon light, as if daring me to step further than I ever had. My hands trembled slightly as I set them on the floor, reminding myself that this wasn't just about footwear. It was a ritual, an initiation, a transformation. The internal conflict hit immediately. A part of me was thrilled, exhilarated, even by the thought of embracing this hidden side of myself. Another part trembled with anxiety, a knot of fear deep in my stomach. What if Emma found out? What if my roommate, or worse, a neighbor, saw me like this? The stakes felt enormous, despite the privacy of my apartment. Yet the allure was undeniable. My pulse quickened as I remembered Ms. Daniels' words, "You'll learn more about yourself than you realize." I started small, slipping into a soft, knee-length skirt I had reserved for special occasions. The fabric was cool against my skin, brushing gently as I moved. It was an odd mix of vulnerability and empowerment. I tugged on a blouse, smoothing the fabric over my chest, then reached for a small bag of makeup. My hands shook as I applied foundation, mascara, and a hint of blush. Each stroke was deliberate, intimate, and strangely liberating. The mirror reflected someone both familiar and foreign. The reflection whispered promises I had never allowed myself to hear before: freedom, confidence, and a thrilling vulnerability all at once. Then came the heels. Sliding my feet into the black patent shoes, I felt a rush of adrenaline. Standing on them was unsteady at first, my legs quivering, but each step slowly transformed into poise. The rhythm of walking, the click of heels against hardwood, became a heartbeat, syncing with my own. In that moment, I understood why Ms. Daniels insisted on them, not just for balance, but for presence. Heels changed the way you moved, the way you carried yourself. They demanded awareness, courage, and grace. Hours passed, and I experimented with different outfits, hairstyles, and makeup variations. The thrill of discovering new expressions of myself was intoxicating. At one point, I tried a sleek black wig I had never dared to wear before. As I adjusted it in the mirror, the transformation became almost complete. I wasn't just Alex in secret anymore. I was a version of myself I had only imagined, fragile yet commanding attention even when alone. But the excitement was tempered by constant anxiety. Every knock on the door made my heart jump. I imagined Emma walking in unexpectedly, or a delivery person ringing the bell. I held my breath, praying no one would discover my secret. The stakes were higher than ever because the thrill wasn't just in the clothes. It was in maintaining control over who knew and who didn't. Each movement, each glance at the mirror, was a reminder of the precarious balance I was navigating. By mid-afternoon, I felt an urge to test myself further. Ms. Daniels had suggested small challenges, writing essays, analyzing poetry, or reading aloud while dressed. I set up my laptop and began reading a complex piece of literature, standing in the heels and skirt, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. The words came alive differently, each sentence resonating in a way it never had before. There was a strange clarity in vulnerability, a mental sharpness that surprised me. Then, just as I was settling into the rhythm of work, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Emma. "Hey, want to meet for coffee later?" Panic shot through me. I hadn't intended for anyone to see me like this, especially not her. My mind raced. Could I change back in time? Could I hide the heels, the skirt, the makeup? The thought of facing Emma while dressed this way was both terrifying and strangely thrilling. I took a deep breath and reminded myself that Ms. Daniels had promised growth, learning, and self-discovery. This was part of the challenge. I decided, impulsively, to stay in the outfit a little longer, pushing myself to embrace the experience fully. I moved through my apartment with careful steps, adjusting the heels, testing my balance, and noting the subtle way the skirt swished with each movement. Each motion heightened my awareness of myself, amplifying the vulnerability that came with this hidden identity. By evening, I was fully immersed in the persona. The skirt hugged my legs, the heels elevated my posture, and the makeup brought out contours of my face I hadn't noticed before. I caught my reflection in the mirror and paused, startled at how complete the transformation felt. I wasn't pretending anymore. I was living it, inhabiting a version of myself that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. The suspense escalated when I heard a knock at the door. My heart froze. Was it Emma? A neighbor? A delivery? I hesitated, trying to calm my racing thoughts. Peeking through the peephole, I saw a familiar figure, my best friend from college, Lily, standing with a curious expression. She hadn't been part of this secret world, and the idea of being discovered now was nerve-wracking. I fumbled with words, my voice trembling slightly as I opened the door. "Hey, what's up?" Lily smiled, oblivious to my inner turmoil. "Just wanted to see if you wanted to grab a snack before dinner. Thought I'd stop by." I nodded, forcing a casual tone, careful to hide the heels and the skirt beneath a long coat I grabbed in a panic. But even as I walked with her to the elevator, I felt the tension of secrecy pressing down. Every step, every gesture, carried the weight of potential exposure. Once Lily left, I returned to my apartment, heart pounding, and took off the coat. I stared at the heels, the skirt, the makeup, and realized something profound. This wasn't just about learning in heels. It was about embracing the duality within me, the thrill and terror of living in a world where my hidden self existed alongside the public persona. Each day, each choice, brought me closer to a balance I had never known, a suspenseful tightrope between fear and exhilaration. That night, as I carefully stored the skirt and heels, I caught my reflection in the mirror one last time. I traced the outline of my face, still faintly touched with blush, and whispered to myself, "Tomorrow I'll go further." The anticipation built, layer upon layer, as I drifted into a restless sleep, dreams blending the thrill of transformation with the anxiety of exposure. Each night, the heels called to me, the skirts whispered promises, and Ms. Daniels' challenge loomed like an unspoken dare. I knew the days ahead would test not only my balance and courage, but the very essence of who I was. The build-up had begun, and there was no turning back. The next morning began with the usual nervous energy, but today felt different. The heels I had grown accustomed to now seemed heavier, almost demanding, as if they knew the challenge ahead would test every ounce of courage I had. My reflection in the mirror was confident, poised, yet tinged with anxiety. Today, Ms. Daniels had planned a real-world test, a social interaction exercise where I would present a short literary analysis in full view of classmates and tutors, fully dressed in my crossdressing persona. I slipped into a pastel skirt and a soft blouse, carefully selecting a pair of heels that elevated my posture without betraying my unsteady balance. Each movement was deliberate, smoothing the fabric, adjusting the neckline, tracing the outline of my face with makeup. The mirror reflected someone both daring and vulnerable. A part of me trembled at the thought of being exposed, but another part burned with anticipation. I was stepping into uncharted territory, and the thrill was irresistible. As I walked into the classroom, the faint click of my heels on the polished floor felt deafening. Heads turned subtly. Whispers followed me for a second too long. The familiar faces of classmates stared, some curious, some confused, but none hostile. My heart pounded with every step, adrenaline surging through my veins. I knew that any misstep, literally or figuratively, could reveal the secret I had guarded so fiercely. Ms. Daniels stood at the front, her sharp eyes observing me with that same unwavering expectation. She smiled, a quiet signal that I had to perform, to embody the challenge completely. I approached the podium, heels making me acutely aware of each movement. My palms sweated, and I gripped my notes tightly, struggling to maintain balance while projecting confidence. The classroom fell silent. Every eye was on me. I began my analysis, voice steady but tinged with nervousness. The words flowed more smoothly than I expected, each sentence infused with a clarity and precision I had never felt before. The transformation was not just physical, it was mental. The persona I had created, fragile yet poised, allowed me to access parts of my intellect I didn't know I possessed. The thrill of empowerment was intoxicating, but it was counterbalanced by the constant fear of exposure. Every glance from a classmate, every subtle smirk or raised eyebrow, set my nerves on edge. Halfway through, the first twist hit. The classroom door creaked, and a familiar voice called out, "Alex." My stomach dropped.
Emma.
She had come to surprise me, unaware of the exercise, unaware of the persona I inhabited at this very moment. My knees wobbled slightly in the heels as I tried to maintain composure. Ms. Daniels noticed the subtle shift in my posture but said nothing, her eyes gleaming with quiet amusement. Emma stepped in, scanning the room, and froze when she saw me. Her mouth opened slightly, a mix of shock and confusion crossing her face. Time seemed to slow. I felt my heart pounding so loudly, it could almost be heard. The skirt, the heels, the makeup, all of it was on full display, and I had no escape. My mind raced, weighing options. Run, hide, explain, or continue. I chose to continue. The persona I had nurtured, the confidence born of practice and preparation, surged forward. I spoke louder, more deliberately, each word a declaration that this side of me was real, that I would not be cowed by fear. Emma's eyes softened slightly, but the tension in the room was palpable. Whispers rippled through the classroom. My classmates watched, unsure, intrigued, fascinated. Then came the second twist. Lily, who had visited the previous day, appeared unexpectedly at the door, holding a stack of papers. Her gaze locked on me, and for a moment, her expression mirrored Emma's: disbelief, curiosity, and amusement. My panic spiked. Could this day get any worse? The risk of my dual life being exposed to everyone I cared about had suddenly multiplied. Ms. Daniels, seemingly anticipating the chaos, gave a subtle nod. "Alex," she said calmly, "embrace it. This is the moment where you learn the most, not just in literature, but in life." I took a deep breath, standing taller in the heels, letting the persona take over completely. The skirt swayed with each step as I moved to collect the papers from Lily, my hands steady despite the adrenaline surging through me. The room held its collective breath. The thrill of danger, of being caught, coursed through every nerve in my body. I was exhilarated, terrified, and alive in a way I had never experienced before. Then came the symbolic moment. A sudden gust of wind from the open window swept across the classroom, and a strand of my wig fell loose, brushing against my cheek. I froze, heart leaping. For a moment, I felt completely exposed, the fragility of my dual identity laid bare. Emma reached out instinctively, straightening the wig with a trembling hand. The intimacy of the gesture, combined with the public scrutiny, sent a shiver down my spine. I realized then that the stakes weren't just social, they were deeply personal. The climax reached its peak when a group of classmates whispered too loudly, drawing attention to the heels I wore. A subtle laugh echoed across the room. My knees quivered, but I held my ground, refusing to let embarrassment dictate my actions. Ms. Daniels' eyes met mine, filled with approval, challenge, and a subtle warning. The learning happens at the edge of discomfort. By the end of the class, I had navigated the balance between fear and thrill, exposure and performance. The applause, tentative but genuine, echoed in my ears. Emma's expression had shifted from shock to something more complex: pride, curiosity, and a silent acknowledgement that this side of me was part of who I truly was. As the classroom emptied, Ms. Daniels pulled me aside. "You've done well," she said quietly. "The challenge isn't over. Every step forward will test you further, but today, you've proven that you can embrace your duality without losing control. Keep practicing. Keep balancing. And remember, the next test will be even more revealing." I left the classroom, heels clicking softly against the hallway tiles, each step carrying the weight of revelation. My mind swirled with exhilaration, fear, and anticipation. The duality within me, Alex, the ordinary student, and the persona I had embraced in skirts and heels, had collided in a way that was both terrifying and liberating. Back at my apartment, I removed the heels slowly, savoring the release and the lingering rush of empowerment. The skirt, the blouse, the makeup, all carefully stored away, reminded me that this journey was far from over. I knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests, and new opportunities to explore the thrilling, dangerous, and intoxicating world I had entered. The suspense lingered. The risk of exposure, the thrill of transformation, and the complexity of my feelings for Emma coalesced into a tight knot of anticipation. Every choice carried consequences. Every glance, every word, every movement could tip the balance. And in that tension, I realized the truth. I was no longer just Alex. I was a student of life, learning faster in heels, embracing the vulnerability and exhilaration that came with living on the edge of secrecy and desire. The apartment was quiet, almost too quiet. I sank onto the edge of my bed, the heels set neatly beside me, the skirt folded carefully in its drawer. My chest still raced from the events at the classroom, from the whispers, the stares, and the undeniable thrill of having performed my dual identity in public for the first time. I should have felt relief, but instead, a tight knot of tension lingered in my stomach. Emma hadn't spoken much since the class ended. She had walked beside me silently, her hand brushing mine occasionally, subtle gestures that said more than words could. Yet her expression remained unreadable, a delicate balance between curiosity, admiration, and caution. I wanted to ask her, plead with her to understand, but fear held my tongue. The secret I had kept for so long was no longer mine alone. I moved to the mirror, catching my reflection. My hair fell perfectly into place, makeup intact, heels gone but still echoing the rhythm of the day in my mind. I traced my fingers over my face, over the sharpness of my jaw, the softness of the blush. The reflection staring back at me wasn't just Alex anymore. It was a persona I had inhabited, one that had claimed part of me I couldn't deny. A sudden knock at the door made me jump. My heart spiked, adrenaline rushing anew. Who could it be at this hour? Emma? Lily? Or someone else entirely? I froze, every nerve alert, heels and skirt momentarily forgotten in the tension. The voice was soft, almost hesitant. "Alex, can we talk?" It was Emma. I swallowed hard, my mind racing. The words caught in my throat, 1,000 questions swirling in my head. Was she angry? Shocked? Curious? Or impressed? The suspense was unbearable. I wanted to hide, to retreat into the comfort of my secret collection, but a part of me, perhaps the bold part one had discovered in Ms. Daniels' challenge, wanted to face her, to confront the unknown. As I opened the door, I saw her standing there, arms folded, eyes searching mine. I don't know what to say, she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. Seeing you like this, it's a lot. But I want to understand. She paused, taking a shaky breath. I don't want to lose you, Alex. But I also don't know where to start. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. I opened my mouth, then closed it again, unsure what to say. Words felt inadequate to convey the storm of fear, excitement, and longing within me. I gestured for her to come in, my hands shaking slightly. But before either of us could speak further, my phone buzzed. A notification from Ms. Daniels. Well done today. But tomorrow, the real test begins. Are you ready to push your limits further? The message glowed on the screen like a warning and a promise, filling the room with an invisible weight. Emma glanced at it and raised an eyebrow. Who's that? I hesitated, my pulse racing. Explaining Ms. Daniels, the experiment, the challenge, it felt impossible without revealing the full scope of my secret. And yet, I couldn't lie. Not now. Not when the tension was already crackling between us. Before I could respond, another knock sounded, louder this time, insistent. My heart froze. Could it be a neighbor? Another classmate? Or someone who had somehow discovered everything? Emma looked at me, her expression sharp now, full of suspicion and concern. Alex, what's going on? I swallowed hard, words failing me as the tension reached a fever pitch. My secret, my persona, the thrill of the challenge, all of it hung in the balance. Every choice from this moment forward would shape not only my identity, but the fragile trust between us. I glanced at the mirror one last time. The reflection staring back was strong, poised, and entirely alive. But behind the confidence lurked the fear. Fear of being exposed, of losing control, of seeing everything unravel in an instant. The door rattled again, demanding attention, a sound that made my pulse slam against my ribs. Emma's eyes locked with mine, silent questions in her gaze. I felt the weight of the heels I had left behind, the swish of the skirt I had folded so carefully, the echo of the persona I had embraced. And I knew, deep down, that the next step, whatever it was, would change everything. I opened my mouth to speak, but before a single word could escape, the door handle turned slowly. The scene froze in a suspended heartbeat. Who was entering? Emma? A stranger? Or someone who would finally expose my secret to the world? And in that moment, I realized the truth. My journey had only begun. The thrill, the fear, and the transformation were far from over. Every step, every choice, every secret I guarded teetered on the edge of discovery. And as the door creaked open, the story hung on a knife's edge, leaving everything unresolved.